Built by horse players for horse players, AmWager is designed for speed, power, and ease of use. AmWager brings CAW-style tools to everyday horse players, including Dutching, ABC Ticket Maker, and Pro Percent, an advanced betting tool that lets you assign weighted percentages and build multiple structured wagers with a single click. Every month, AmWager turns the odds in your favor with 0% takeout on select tracks. These promos offer you up to $100 more for your winning bets and giving you value for your wagers not offered anywhere else. Rated 4.7 stars on Google with over 200 reviews, AmWager is trusted by horse players who expect more from their wagering platform. If you're looking for better tools and better value, you need AmWager. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit amwager.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 or older where applicable. Gambling problem? Please call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY. Text HOPE.
Welcome to the Swerve Kings podcast, episode 351, sponsored by AmWager. Go to amwager.com to see all the promotions, including this Saturday's 0% takeout promo on win bets at Gulfstream Park. That's right, 0% takeout on win bets at GP, including all the races we're going to talk about this week, and that includes the Grade 2 Fountain of Youth. As always, I welcome your feedback on Twitter/X. My handle is @Derby1592. That's @Derby1592. And this week, I am joined by special guest, the VP of Content at Horse Racing Nation, Ed DeRosa. The show will focus on finding and exploiting value on Saturday's Gulfstream Park card. We will talk about our strongest handicapping opinions and how we might leverage those opinions using optimal betting strategies. Hello, Ed. How's it going?
It's going great. Love this time of year. The weather getting better, Derby on the horizon, and certainly the right kind of races this weekend to be thinking Derby.
Yeah, the Derby chatter starting to pick up. I always think it gets started way too early. Of course, like Horse Racing Nation, it gives you something to talk about, but like picking these top 20 lists in January and February seems kind of silly. But now we're starting to get into the real preps. And
I will tell you.
Go ahead.
That, from a traffic standpoint, there's stuff I've written about Derby-wise in August and September that hangs right there with Saratoga and Breeders' Cup content. So, for whatever reason, it's in the zeitgeist for sure. And I tend to agree. Like from a utility standpoint, how useful is it to do top X lists at a certain point of time? I definitely get the angst there, but I will say, just wearing the hat of someone trying to make money off content. It's important to play the hits, and nothing gets people to the site like Derby talk.
Yeah, the Triple Crown and the Derby in particular, it's so much. It gets so much more attention than it really deserves, I think. But you can't. That's my opinion.
I sort of look at it from the standpoint, instead of like thinking, oh, the Derby shouldn't get that much attention. I almost see it as sort of the anchor and say, okay, we know a race is capable of this much attention. How do we whether it's learning from what people like about the Derby to get people to pay attention to other races, or, in my mind, it's, not so much fewer resources on Derby to benefit others. It's how can we learn from this and make the others, I don't want to say like the Derby. I think that's probably impossible, but it does seem like if the Derby can get this much attention, there's other opportunity out there.
Yeah, you would think. It's just things like, to me, that I find amusing is like people think that, well, the Derby winner must be the best horse in the world, and
right.
they don't understand it at all. That's not not true. Very seldom, if ever, is that true.
Yeah, and I mean, even at that point in the year, like even if they're clearly the best 3-year-old, like say a American Pharaoh or Justify, yeah, best in the world is
it's silly.
it's very very hard
Right.
for a 3-year-old in May to be
Right.
that.
Even the best 3-year-old ever. And there are a couple of exceptions, maybe a Citation or a Secretariat. Citation was actually beating the older horses when he was a 3-year-old in May, but it's very unusual, and people don't understand that, you know. So I just think it's good. You know, it's great to have racing be the center of attention, but I think people need to put it in the right context, especially if you're a horse player and you want to, you know, you only have so much time. You probably want to focus your time where it makes sense. But anyway, this will definitely amplify that chatter this weekend, you know, and it'll give you more HRN content to put
Oh
out there.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's for sure.
I agree. You know, like I do some silly stuff for Derby too. Like I do a projection. I use a math model to project how fast a horse based on their best mile and eighth prep, how fast they're likely to run going a mile and a quarter. You know, it has some utility, but it gets all kinds of interest. You know, it's very simple model, and it doesn't predict the winner necessarily. It just says, you know, if they ran exactly the same kind of race they ran in their prep, where you think they would finish going a mile and a quarter. But it does get an inordinate amount of attention. So I understand what you're saying. And if I were in your world, I'd play up to that. And I kind of am now because my book is coming out any day now. Maybe by the time people listen to this, it'll be available. And I might want to tap into that interest in the Derby to generate some interest in the book. So I might be playing that game a little bit over the
Yeah,
next
no,
few months.
that's definitely a game. As I mean, we've seen influencers do, and I mean, for content, you kind of got to gamify and strike while the iron's hot. So I wouldn't discourage it. Yeah, but yeah, Keeneland and Derby and the rest of the Triple Crown. Like now's the time you're going to sell books for sure. So I'm looking forward to reading it myself.
Yeah, I'll be looking forward to seeing what you think of it. I there's something. No matter where you are as a horse player, there's something in there for you, whether you're just getting started or you've been doing it for years. And a lot of sharp, successful players contributed to the content. Um, and you know, I just really encourage people to read it. We haven't had a good horse player book in a while. They're just since the DRF press went away, really. So, you know, I'm trying to fill that void, and hopefully this will to some extent. And I encourage everybody that's interested in horse racing, you know, maybe give it, you know, take a look, buy the book. Better yet, tell your friends, buy them as gifts. Um, you know, and if you like the Sport of Kings podcast over the last 5 or 6 years, or the Bet with the Best podcast, this is, you know, a way to keep that going. So
Mhm.
anyway, enough of my book. Let's talk about the
Father's
race.
Day's right after the Triple Crown, so
That's right. That's right. All right. So let's move on. First of all, before we get started in about these races, I'd like to find out from you kind of your process. You know, how do you analyze the races? How do you decide which ones are worthy of potential bets? And then how do you decide how you're actually going to bet the races when you find one you do want to bet? So, kind of at a high level, what's your approach?
yeah, well, a lot of people from social media know I grid my picks and do the A/B column thing, and I always do try to emphasize, you know, that isn't a recipe. You know, I'm not always betting A/B, 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 or A with B, or you know, it's just more for me to compartmentalize my opinions. I really try to, you know, where I think there's a stand to make, say, okay, this is a horse that I'm willing to lean on, and maybe downgrade a couple others because of prices, just to sort of show that opinion that I'm leaning in the A column. You know, and then the B is more okay. Let's check the board. You know, cliche I really like is price is the final arbiter. No matter what, and this sort of complements the fair odds strategy as well. No matter what, there should be a price you're not willing to take on a horse, no matter how much you love him. Uh, and that's just the nature of the parimutuel game. And we'll get to that a little bit with the Fountain of Youth, because I was very surprised to see the morning line, and it's pretty different from how I think the race is going to be bet. So that's a potential opportunity. So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, if the race really gets bet this way, this is a race I'm going to take a stand on. But in the pick five, which starts with race 10, the very one, you're kind of at the mercy of just hoping the morning line's accurate or your own estimation how the race is going to get bet. But then come race 14, Fountain of Youth time, you're going to see the board, and you'll be able to make a decision whether it's go time on the opinion you have because the board is compensating you appropriately, or in my head, maybe I was right about how it's going to get bet and morning line maker's wrong. And then I'm going to either have to adjust if there's still opportunity or just sit on my hands. So for me, the approach is, okay, here's the opinions. AB sort of gives a sense of who I think's more likely than not. But always I'm looking to play the board or at least make adjustments based on the board. And is maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I talked about this on Jason Beam's podcast. Looking back at my records, just how I bet, when I do well, when I don't, which unfortunately is more often than when I do well. But there was a clear instance of when I was putting bets in ahead of time because I'm going to a game with the family, or stuff's going on and I handicap the race and I'm going to make some bets at noon for races that are at 4 or 5. Like, there was a clear ROI drop when I was playing that far in advance. So there's definitely an edge to knowing what price to accept in your head and sticking to it. And when you think about it, that makes perfect sense. The best players in the world are the CAW teams for the most part. And a big part of their edge is making bets at the last literally fraction of a second, which incorporates all the pricing information they could possibly have. So, when you realize they're doing it, it's kind of foolish not for you to do it. Now, that's not to say you can't have action bets on horses you really like, or, a stable male horse that you just want to make sure you get a bet down on that you want to see run back. But, as a retail plus player where I'm out to beat the game, I think it's important to look at final price. So, that's my approach. Kind of see where the opportunity is, and then hope the board gives it to you.
Well, you brought up a lot of points. I just want to follow up on a couple. One, you kept records, and I think that's kind of important. I mean, or at least you looked at. You don't really have to keep records if you bet through an ADW. You can actually see your results, and it breaks it down some different ways. But if you might want to keep some records beyond what the ADWs do. And most of the better players do that I talk about in the book. That's one of the things we talk about in there. And it sounds like you got some value out of that. And I know that you do kind of an annual review kind of write-up. Have you ever discovered other kind of nuggets in that reviewing your results?
Well, one thing I rolled in just starting this year is the AI revolution is coming for everyone supposedly, but for sure, ExpressBet and Twin Spires allow you to export your wagers so you can save them as the CSV or whatnot. And I basically uploaded. I was able to go back to fall of 2022, so 3.5 years ish of wagering data. And I basically asked the AI, like, hey, go through this group for track, race type, all those sorts of things. And you basically have a conversation with it as people do with Chat GPT and things like that, but it's strictly based on your data and the results. And I mean, it's illuminating. There's definitely strengths and weaknesses that bear out over at that, what, 3.5 years. I mean, it was approaching $1 million in handle and tons of different bets and race days and things like that. And some clear strengths and weaknesses show up. For whatever reason, a pick six is a bridge too far. I think part of that's just sort of capital allocation. A lot of times when I don't play the pick six often, but when I do, it's probably a mandatory day, something like that, or maybe I have some opinion where I'm singling an 8-to-1 horse trying to catch lightning in a bottle. Um, and I think the ROI was like negative 80%, something like that. It was really bad. So that's something where it gives pause. Like, man, so what? It's a mandatory payout. Like, I'm chasing these bets and they're just not working out. Like that. That's clearly, and in fact, the AI, the large language model even said something like, this is clearly not a strength of yours. Like this isn't. Oh, if one thing had gone your way, it could be better. You're just six is too many. So, that's something in black and white that using the AI to just analyze 3.5 years of bets, to me, took it to another level than even just the eyeball test would have accomplished. And all that stuff is free, whether it's Copilot or Gemini or Claude or ChatGPT. Like if you have the CSVs, it'll be able to read it, and I would encourage everyone to do it.
There you go. Good idea. Not just look at it yourself, but get some artificial intelligence to help you out. But the idea being, you look at your performance longer term, where you have enough data to be meaningful, and you can identify, strengths and weaknesses, and adjust the way you play. And that's one of the themes, constantly evolving and adapting in the book. And we also spend a lot of time talking about value, and you mentioned there. One other thing, just in your A B matrix. So is A the most likely winner, or do you factor price into that? I wasn't quite sure how you define the A and the B horses.
I do try to factor in price. I mean, I will say, unfortunately, over it's bound to happen. But like I feel like I have gotten burned a couple times on thinking, some horse is going to get bet, and I downgrade it to a B, and it doesn't get bet, and it wins. And yeah, I mean that's sort of results oriented. It works the other way too, where I think, oh, this horse is going to be great value, and I upgrade it to an A, and I'm using it in a bunch of places, and then it gets bet down to 2-to-1, and you're like, oh, I never would have used this horse. So, and that goes back to being nimble, and when you're playing, able to react to the board, which you can't always do in pick ends, but still something to keep in mind. But another thing I've used, and this is a little deeper. I've actually had to code this, so I've gotten help from Claude Code, which is sort of the next level AI that helps you code things. But I was able to hook up the grid to results, and not only just like, okay, who won this race, Fairgrounds race one, and the prices that came back and things like that. But when you're able to hook it up to results, you get race type, you get the odds of the horse, things like that. So and I just started that in January, so sample size wise, we're pretty low. But one thing I'm really trying to dig into is, what are the signals that this is a good opinion when I handicap a race and display it in the grid format? And as one would expect, the best performance so far, and looking forward to seeing how this plays out, over many races. But so far, there is a clear ROI supremacy to when I just have a lone A. When I have a singular, I'm willing to lean on this opinion, the ROI, and this is again just this year, but it's negative 6%, which for a pick you're making, in the morning of the race, I think is pretty solid. And actually, so far, a lone A that aren't favored, which now we're getting into a much smaller sample size. So I want to, wait and let it play out. But I'm actually positive ROI in those situations. So, they don't happen often. If you typically your single gets bet, but being able to analyze it in that way just to me is giving me more confidence that when I do decide, okay, is this a pick N? I can play a pick four or pick five, and I've found a lone A that's not favored. That kind of tells me, that's sort of your pocket aces. Like you got to be ready to play that hand. And, sometimes the betting on the flop tells you you're beat, and you still have to fold a pretty hand, but you know, if you look at the data and how you do in certain races, trends are going to show up. And to me, you just got to play to your strengths in this game. CRW isn't invincible. They do make it harder. But if you play to your strengths and are disciplined, I do think there still is opportunity.
Yes, and that what you just said there is one of the another theme in the book. There's a whole bunch of several chapters on computers, computer teams, and what they mean and how you can adjust your play. And a lot of what you said is exactly what I say in the book. And I think the other big theme is just there's a lot of value in the way Mark Kramer said it, and that I quote him in the book is you know your results. If you keep a record of your results, that's the best handicapping book you could possibly have. And if you study that, you can learn a lot. And I think what you
Yeah.
just described is exactly what he was saying.
And don't be stubborn. I mean, shame on me. I should be embarrassed to admit it, but it was in my 30s. So it was, 10 years ago, and live and learn thanks to people like you and ITP who, are willing to say, hey, this is the wrong way to play. But I mean, I remember looking back at my stuff, and I was at Churchill Downs at the time. And like, I mean, I love the all button. Like, oh, I'm going to get lucky with the all button. And I mean, it is just death to, whether it's your day to day bankroll or maybe you do get lucky with it. So then you get this false sense of like, oh, yeah, that's the way to play. But it's just so clear when you look back that overspreading or the all button, the ultimate overspread is just so poor for your bankroll. And I do take the approach that this is entertainment, and I know that not everyone is professional like ITP, or even it has a seriousness to it that I try to bring. And sometimes if you play once a month and you're going to use the all button because that's fun for you. I get it, but I really, anyone who wants to get better, if this is more than just a roulette wheel to you, take a look at your results and how you bet and when you do well long term. And I promise you'll find that overspreading is just a killer.
Yes. A lot of the ITP wisdom is in the book. So, and there's at the end, I have a 10 commandments for horse players, and there's something about the all button in those 10 commandments. I'll just say
All right.
that.
No, and even
Thou shalt, and I won't. You'll have to read it to find out the rest. Okay.
I'll just say I don't know if you're aware, but James Scully, sort of Mr. Superfecto over at Churchill / Twin Spires, he hit the Super of the Year Rich Strike one. And I know a lot of people like, oh, he had the all button, and he didn't. Like, now his structure was like his B tier, if I'm absolutely right about Epicenter and Zandon running well, which he was, his like, okay, who else can win? I think he had 12 other horses. So granted, that was a lot, but he was narrow with Epicenter and Zandon in both in two of the legs he used them. Like it had to be those two with the other. And if he had tried to get cute with the all button on top, he would have had to shave in the fourth spot and would have missed. So, even when you're like using 12, which, yeah, that probably sounds like a lot, but the way he was able to narrow, if he had gone all and like, well, I don't want to lose if Epicenter and Zandon are second and third, he would have lost because he wouldn't, I even forget who was fourth that year, but he wouldn't have gotten there. So it was, even being willing to throw out horses in that setting. And of course, the key thing was not throwing out Rich Strike among the six he didn't use. But even in those situations, that was a case of if he had gone all, he would have missed, and instead he got to be the hero.
Yeah, and that's and you're making it easy to talk about the book. I was going to do that, but I have what I call deep dives in the book where I go into detail on things, and one of my deep dives is on the Derby Superfecta and Mike Maloney, a very successful professional player, his approach to it, and it's very similar to what you described. He tries to allow the possibility of the chaos horses coming in there, but to do that, you have to really. He has either a double key or a triple key. He talked about a double key there with two horses. Sometimes he even does a triple key, and he might do the all button on that just because maybe not in the first spot, but in the fourth spot, because that's usually, a lot of times that's where the 60 to 1 shot comes in. So Anyway, I'll stop. I'll try to not talk about the book anymore. But a lot of these points you're making are really good, and they're things that get reinforced in the book. So hopefully people will be interested when that comes out, which will be this weekend. Should be sometime. It might even be before people listen to this podcast. But let's move on. Good discussion though, Ed. Lots of good points. I'm with you on just about everything you said there. Before we get into the races, one last thing I like to do is talk about the betting menu at the track that we're playing. In this case, it's Gulfstream. It's pretty average for most bets. It does have one I'd call player-friendly bet. That's their special all-turf pick 3 with a $3 minimum and 15% takeout. It's the last 3 turf races on the card. We're going to talk about all 3 of those. If you like horizontals, that's probably the best one they have. They do have their middle pick 5, which supposedly does not allow CAW participation. So if you want to play a pick 5, that's probably the best one from a betting standpoint, because the teams really eat retail players alive in those pick 5s and pick 6s. They also have some special bets with Santa Anita that are 15% takeout and also supposedly don't allow CAW participation. That's the Coast to Coast pick 5 and the Sunset pick 6. Unfortunately, they. Oh, do you have something to add there, Ed?
No, I my understanding of those bets is same as yours. 15%, no CAW.
But the Rainbow pick 6 is a playground for the CAWs.
I mean, at Twin Spires, I had some access to stuff, and super high level retail players just get absolutely destroyed by the jackpot bets. And this is off the heels of 10 minutes ago me saying what my pick 6 ROI is, which is wretched, and I mean it's the total for retail players isn't as bad as mine, but it's going to smooth out in some way. But it was 40, -40, -50% depending on the track. So yeah, it's just if you want to play a lottery ticket, or you're rich and the money doesn't mean anything, I could see it, like that's press the hard ways on a craps table type of bet. But for day to day allocating your bankroll or week to week as a weekend warrior, it's as bad as it gets.
Yeah, and even on the mandatory days where you'd think the EV is better, Pat Cummings put out some data showing just 40 per 50% loss for retail players, even on the mandatory days. When there's all this free money in quotes out there, the teams just crush it, right? So you have to be aware of that. Yeah, doesn't mean you can't play it, but you got to be smart.
No, well, yeah, I would say just be smart. I mean, if you have an opinion on a separator or slash a couple favorites that you're trying to beat, makes perfect sense. But and I'm guilty of this. I just got to get better. And the results show, like, just be better about it. But just playing because it's a carryover and shoehorning a bet to fit some preconceived budget, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, that's a prescription for. Unless you get really lucky, just losing your money. And you got to be aware of that the teams are in all the pools that I haven't mentioned that's being they're out of, which means just about everything else. So that's a really high hurdle to overcome when you have takeout and that competition from the teams.
Right.
Now, there's one exception. If you bet through AmWager to win, you'll have a lower takeout than the teams. So that's probably the first place to look. If you have that, if you can do that. And but everywhere else, you've got to pick your spots, just like you said, Ed. You have to really think you've found some value, because if you're trying to bet every race, you just don't have a chance. Nope. Not anymore. The hurdle is too high to overcome. So you have to become sharper and more selective in the way you bet. And so we'll talk about hopefully some fairly sharp opinions. We'll let you decide that.
Let's hope. Yeah.
On the last 5 races, they're all graded stakes races at Gulfstream. The first one is race 10. It's the grade 3, the very one stakes, going a mile and 3/8 on the turf for older fillies and mares. In this race, I think No Show Sammy Joe is the 9-5 morning line favorite and probably will be a strong favorite. They have Candy Quest at 5-2 on the morning line. What do you think of those favorites, Ed? Are those favorites you're going to lean on? Are they ones you're going to try to bet against? What's your opinion on this race?
Yeah, there's two morning line favorites I'm dead against in this sequence, and two that I like more than others. And no show Sammy Joe is one that I like. Um, really had little chance given how things developed in the Christophe Clement. Just made a move into a super slow pace, and then that was that. I'm a little encouraged that, I mean, this mare actually has some races further back in the PPs where she has been a little closer. Now, I don't know if in the old age, the last two she's kind of been out of it, but caught a fast pace in the race in December. But uh, Motion staying loyal to Ruiz here, and I'd love to see from the outside post, not necessarily saying they need to go for the lead, but a little more aggression can make a world of difference against this group. So I'm kind of eager to see the tactics. Candy Quest is just a dead closer, period. I mean, there's nothing to look at in those PPs other than, I guess you could say, our odds getting on, Sonny Leone. That's certainly quite a jockey change. But I mean, even through the past, in the route races, Candy Quest just isn't on the muscle. So from that perspective, the two shorter prices, I do like No Show Sammy Joe better, and Candy Quest would be a horse I'd be looking to fade in here. Value wise, Venencia. I'm interested in because she also has shown some speed. She ended up way out of it in the Clement, which just never was going to work. But Tyler Gaffleone gets up for Sappy. So I sort of like that move, and maybe she shows a little more aggression as well. So I'd probably be looking to make the motion horse my A here and start off kind of thin. But I do think Venencia, if I'm seeing 6-1 and Candy Quest is clearly taking money in this pool, I would probably upgrade Venencia as well if we're getting the morning line or close to it or even better. So 9-3 to start the sequences, and I'm with you completely. The $3 turf pick three is a must. So we'll be playing both.
Yeah, maybe we'll talk about it at the end. Talk about the turf pick three. Sounds like that might be one we can spend a little time on what ticket you might construct in that with your AB
Yeah.
picks. I had one of the questions from a listener was saying, could you talk a little bit about that? So since you're interested in that, let's do that. Remind me to do that when we're done
Sure.
going through the races. Just a couple points on your No Show Sammy Joe. I did look, if you look at her last four races, three of the four had like ridiculously slow paces, and the one that had a fast pace, she just crushed in. So I don't anticipate a hot pace in here,
That's
though.
the problem.
What do you it doesn't look like a lot of speed in here. So is that a concern with her in this race?
Yeah, no, it's a concern. I would say it's even more of a concern with the second choice Candy Quest, which is why I'm sort of willing to take a short-ish price on No Show. I'm also willing to gamble a little bit, just looking at run styles in the past that she is capable of pressing a little better than Candy Quest has shown in her PP. She's always out of it, sort of in the back end, not always, but just more recently against these types is further back. Rod definitely gives some pause because he's top two in the country. So maybe he wakes her up and gets her involved a little earlier, but what look to be similar prices, especially in the pick five. I mean, maybe No Show is favored. She's 9-5 morning line, but I expect them to be pretty close in the wagering. I definitely prefer No Show, but that is part of the reason Venencia, like sort of an upgrade, is a backup plus because I do think with the inside draw change to Gaffleone and some Brisnet pace ratings that definitely show she's capable of being on the lead or close to it against this group. She merits a look.
Yeah, the other thing I mentioned about no show Sammy Joe, this race is 3 turns. It starts close to that first turn, and the horse is on the outside. So, they kind of, if they don't drop back, which they might, they could get hung a little bit wide, at least on the first turn, which wouldn't help her chances either. You can kind of tell
Yeah,
I'm,
I mean, losing ground, not ideal, but also maybe blessing in disguise that since there is so little speed here, that I mean, they could probably just tuck second. I mean, like if fantasy performers in here to try to win at 30 to 1 morning line, to me, I mean, why wouldn't you go with her? Um, so I could see that benefit, that could be to no show's benefit if, she just tries to tuck behind her.
yeah, I think, no show Sammy Joe is certainly one of the more likely winners. But at the price, I'm kind of against her just because of the pace scenario and
I mean, I
the
guess the other
post.
thing is Motion does have an uncoupled entrant in here. Um, Now,
Yeah, four
pace rating
flying.
wise, she's not super fast, but I mean, in this group, like it's not going to take much to press whatever the pace is. So,
Yeah, she might
uh,
be in there to push the pace. So that'll help her stablemate. It just kind of depends on how the overall sets up. There's actually 2 horses in here I'm interested in, and from a betting standpoint. One of them is the 6 Donna Clota, Donna Clota. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. It's a horse that came from Chile. It wasn't much. It wasn't a great horse. It was a pretty good horse in Chile, but until they stretched her out to the longer distances, and once they went to a mile and a quarter, she just started, winning, and she won 3 straight, including 2 group ones. I'm not sure how good a group one is in Chile, but the horse has got some talent and loves going long. Her U.S. they and I it's kind of a no asking way too much, I think, right off the plane to run in the Pegasus turf. So I thought that was just the placement error. They gave her some time to acclimate, and then brought her back to Saratoga. Not sure what. I thought her race wasn't bad at all in there. She did not get a good trip. But I'm not sure what led to that second layoff. But she seems to be training back pretty well, and now they actually have her in a long race. The other races were, I think, more like preps. I'm a little surprised they didn't try to prep her once for this, but to me, she's a real wild card. She's got some talent. I think I'm always looking for these foreign horses in these marathons because U.S. horses just typically aren't really made for them. So I like her quite a bit if she does go off at 8 to 1. I think she's playable. And the other one I'm kind of different but similar, is the 2 horse Just Basking. This is another horse who I think just loves the distance. I mean, she didn't break her maiden until she got into a mile and a quarter race. There can't be too many mile and a quarter maiden races on the dirt. But she found one and crushed the field in that race. Her other time to go long was a mile and a quarter in the Alabama Grade 1. You think she was in over her head, but she only got beat a length on that race. So clearly, this is a
yeah,
horse that
took money. She
loves.
was 7 to 2.
Yeah, she loves the distance. But there's no mile and a quarter races on the dirt for fillies and mares and stakes races, at least graded stakes. There just aren't any. So they probably were thinking, let's get her on the turf where we can go long. And they tried her once at the fairgrounds. I think it was more of a prep. It wasn't long enough for her best. But she didn't run too bad. She did not have a good trip in there. Kind of a no chance pace to run into. Again, kind of like Donna Clota, not sure what led to the layoff, but I think the last was a nice prep going shorter. Now, second off the layoff, they're stretching her out to the distance she likes. I mean, the turf's still a bit of a question, but I didn't think her turf effort was that bad at all. She just may have been waiting her whole life to go long on the turf. So that one could be a giant price. So those are the 2 I'm interested in this race. And in the turf pick 3, those would be the 2 I would use, in this first leg. Try to kick it off with a bang.
We definitely warmed me up to Just Basking a little bit, and the turf debut, she was 5-2 against 8 others, so the money sort of showed, which is interesting off that kind of layoff. And I mean, look, she was whatever in Alabama, less than 4-1. My concern, I would say, on Donna Clota, not that, I think 8-1's kind of that range where not really wanting to talk anyone off, but a little odd to me. A horse, trained by, at the time, Chad Brown in a turf allowance at Saratoga, getting Lasix for the first time, just was completely dismissed in a 6-horse field. Now maybe they knew she wasn't ready, who knows? But that kind of caught my eye, like 11-1, first time Lasix for Chad, and now the layoff to go along here. But Just Basking, I think I'm gonna definitely have to be one of those where, like, if I'm right the rest of the way, I wouldn't want to have lost to her based on what you've brought up.
Yeah, I just always as soon as I get to 10 furlongs or longer on the turf, I'm really looking for distance angles, just because most U.S. bred horses aren't really bred to go 11 or 12 furlongs on the turf. That's not their game.
Right.
So I'm always looking for the foreign shippers, or just certain horses that clearly distance is their thing. And to me, Donna Clota, clearly she got better with the distance, and she hasn't had a chance to run at the distance in the U.S., so that's something to keep in mind. And Just Basking clearly likes the distance, has never had a chance to go this distance ever, but certainly not on the turf yet. So both of them are wild cards, I think. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see either one win. They might both not be that good on either. Maybe Donna Clota's just never really adjusted to U.S. racing, and maybe Just Basking, not a turf horse. I don't know. But I think given the price, they're probably worth a shot. That's all.
Yeah. No,
All
I
right.
mean, a race where we're like struggling to find who's the speed and, what's going to happen with the distance. Like,
All right.
I get it.
A lot of questions. So this is the kind of race where I want to take a shot, especially at the turf races where trips matter so much. On a dirt race, I'm not always licking my chops, but at a marathon turf race around 3 turns, unless the favorite stands out, if I can find some holes, then I'm probably going to take a shot against it.
Yeah.
And this case, I think Sammy Joe's a good horse, but she's no standout. And she's got some things to overcome in terms of pace and post. And her rider is not bad, but it's not the kind of rider I can trust to get a good trip when things aren't all, set up for the horse. If it was Flavian Pratt, I'd think, well, that post and the pace probably doesn't matter as much. But for Jorge Ruiz, it's going to be a challenge for him, I think.
Yeah.
All right, let's go on to the next race. This is also a grade 2. This race 11. This is the Devona Dale Stakes, going a mile on the dirt, restricted to 3-year-old fillies. This would be an Oaks prep, I guess. It's on the Oaks Trail, some of these horses. This race has a 9-5 morning line favorite, On Time Girl. Probably the 3-1 second choice might buy for favoritism as well. 7 Swing Vote. Well, what are you thinking on this one, Ed, about the favorites in the race in general?
Yeah, this is where I'm going to try to beat the favorite. Not out of any like, oh, she can't win, like terrible favorite, but I do think the 3 I am most interested in are enough with her, that to me it's worth spreading a little bit against a horse. At least based on the morning line, looks like might be some single, and I get it. Won her last 2, both stakes, combined 6.5 lengths. Can't imagine the stretch out to this distance is going to be an issue, being by not this time out of an Uncle Mo mare. But Rod Cox, like, I mean, this is just these are the connections that just keep taking money. And she was 11-10 last time, and the magazine sheets say she's just as good as the 3 I'm about to talk about. So she's one I'm against. In terms of structuring my tickets, I'll take a stand against her and let her beat me. She be smooth just to her inside. Won the debut for Todd, 9 2 on debut, which, given how she won, kind of a surprise. I don't know if they didn't know what she wanted or think she wants longer or what. But she doesn't get longer here. She stays at the 1 turn mile. And, she sat off. Brisnet called it a somewhat slow pace. And she sat off and then just that was it. But a rod sticks with On Time Girl. That might help the price on She Be Smooth as well. But I thought that was a great debut, and I'm willing to back her as the non-favorite here to run it back. Swing vote. Uh, that last race, Ragozin has is much faster than her debut, and she was 9 to 5 in both of them. So, Mott, he wins first time sometimes, but it's not like he's a trainer where if you get beat on debut, you're going to worry about it too much. I guess back to non-Lasix, maybe a little bit of a concern, and I wouldn't want much lower than 3 to 1. If you're correct that she ends up kind of co-favored with On Time Girl, I wouldn't love her as much. But if there's separation, as the morning line would suggest, I think she's absolutely playable. And again, the stretch for her, the stretch out to a 1 turn mile doesn't bother me at all, given the pedigree. And then lastly, the other clutcher was Imperatrice. And she actually made the lead against On Time Girl and then just got caught. I think she can move forward again. She broke her maiden going this 1 turn mile and cut back a little bit. I'm surprised Todd hasn't separated her and tried a 2 turn race somewhere, given that she's by City of Light out of a Scat Daddy mare. Obviously, that's to come if she runs well here, but 8 to 1, too good of a price. I mean, I thought she showed she belonged in the forward gal, and yeah, ran out of gas, got beat maybe by a better horse at 7 furlongs that day. But I think back out to the 1 turn mile here at 8 to 1, I have to give her another shot, even though she got beat last time. So 5, 7, 8 for me are the three I want to try to get through this leg with.
So what do you think about this from a pace perspective? It seems like there's a lot of speed in here. Do you agree? And if so, who do you think that helps? Because that might not help On Time Girl a lot. She did draw the outside, but she could get hung wide on the turn, I would think, given all the speed inside. What do you think about that?
No, there's and Imperatrice is one, like, I mean, with her, it's almost, can she be the speed of the speed? And that's good enough. Omaha Bay, I guess, is the one that's most likely to just get out there. I think enough of these we'll learn a lot about this race because whoever wins is going to have to relax. Even if Imperatrice, who has pretty solid, I think Ragozin pattern for here, but even if she were to, let's say, they want to go for it, stretching out to the 1 turn mile, since she won gate to wire when she broke her maiden, she's going to have to relax at some point. Like, she's not going to blitz the field and just keep going. So to me, we'll learn something, and that's valuable because when it comes to the 9 furlong Oaks under the lights in 9 weeks, you're going to want to be able to have a filly who can relax as well. So, but Omaha Bay figures gonna have to go. I actually thought Blazing Brat at 30 to 1 morning line, like that kind of, she doesn't seem totally impossible to me. Now the Brisnet speed ratings say she's way a cup below, but with the inside draw, I don't know, 30 to 1. Like, is she one that if she's just kind of saving ground can be third at a ginormous number and blow up the try? Just kind of spitballing now away from your pace question, but I just think it's a matter of, yeah, someone's going to have to relax. We're going to have to see some professional, classy performance for a stakes level. And to me, that's another reason why take On Time Girl from the Fire Outside Post as the favorite, because whoever wins is going to have to like work and show that professionalism. Not saying she can't, but from a price standpoint, I'd rather gamble on it coming from a filly with a higher price.
Yeah, especially when she has to stretch out, right? And so she's stretching out, and she's probably in a race with a lot hotter pace than she would prefer. Although she did show the ability to, come past horses at the end, so maybe she can do that again in here. But at a short price, it seems like she would be the one to play against. I really don't have any strong opinions. I was wanting to bet against all the favorites for various reasons. I think there's knocks on all of them, but I just couldn't find any. The problem is, the long shots all look like they're going to be up there on the front end trying to stretch out for the first time too. So I just couldn't find anything that got my juices flowing. This is a definitely pass race for me. I couldn't come up with anything. So it sounds like you are going to fade On Time Girl, right?
Yep.
But you're in the 5, 7, and 8. Imperatrice, the 5, 7 swing vote, and 8 She Be Smooth. Those are the three. If you were playing like a pick 5, you would be using.
Yes.
Is there one you're leaning on among those three?
I mean, in part just because the prices. Well, I guess Imperatrice has the highest price of the three morning line, but pace wise, she figures to be more forward. So dynamics of the race and the fact that she's 5-1 on the morning line, I would say She Be Smooth would get the top pick nod. She came home great in the debut, and I figure and not that people are going to be shy about betting Pratt, but Ortiz does stick with On Time Girl, so that might help the price a little bit too. And yeah, I would say like who am I most excited to maybe have a win bet on? It would be She Be Smooth. But I will say, from a wagering strategy standpoint, I will be looking at, some what Travis Stone calls reversers. I'm sure other people call it as well, where like, if Blazing Brat wins, that's a huge upset. That's a really tall order. But I absolutely think she can be third in here. And at 30-1 morning line, if I can structure the right bet and, even if it's 8-9-2, you're going to do all right. So that's something I'm going to be looking at the board at is there something I can do with Blazing Brat underneath? But from the pick 5 standpoint, 5, 7, 8 are the three I'll use.
So you're thinking from a value standpoint, Blazing Brat as an underneath key in try or super that you're looking at that maybe?
Yep. Yeah, 100%.
Do you typically prefer the vertical bets, horizontal bets, both? I mean, what's your
I for whatever reason, I think part of it's just habit, which at times is a bad one because the ROI, like when talked earlier about crunching the numbers, the vertical is actually noticeably better than the horizontal. I just like horizontal because I just, I feel, if I throw out a favorite here, but, and ITP's talked about this with me, so be interested to see if it's in the book. But, with a vertical, your opinion's your opinion and that's it in the race. With the pick 5 or even pick 4, like what are the chances you really have an opinion on all 4 or all 5 races? Typically not. So, I am trying to get better about, okay, I think there's an opportunity here with Blazing Brat. Like, why tie up capital in a race? Like, yeah, you're acknowledging the favorite strong, but you're not going to use because it's underlaid, which is fine. But, you know, why miss? Like, even if the 8 wins and you're like, all right, I'm live in my pick 5 and it comes 8-9-2 and you get nothing out of the race and then you're out in the next leg of the pick 5, like that's an avoidable mistake in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but there's trade-offs. Like on the pick 5, we talked about the importance of being selective, and it's really hard to be selective if you play like a pick 5 or a pick 4. You're stuck with those 5 races. Now you could be selective, and if you can just discipline yourself to where you only play the pick 5s where you have opinions in most all the legs, and then that's different. But if you say I'm going to play the pick 5, it's like you said, the odds that the likelihood that you have a good opinion in every race in the sequence is low. So being selective is a lot easier to do with verticals, I think, than horizontals. And also, the whole issue around price discovery that you talked about, knowing what the prices are and knowing what the board says and getting those tote signals, you get a lot less of that in horizontals. So that's another negative. I think the biggest positive with horizontal bets is that you only have to worry about the winner, right? And I think there's a lot of figuring out who's going to run third or fourth, and whereas who's going to win. And, most of the trainers and jockeys are all focused on that. They might not be as focused on running third or fourth. So I think that's the advantage, is it's just about winning. But I think there are a lot of factors that you need to take into account. And part of it's what your strengths are. Are you good at, picking the winners? And have you pretty good, robust handicapping skills where you can have a decent opinion on lots of different types of races? Or are you more of a specialist, where you're really much better in certain kinds of races and terrible in others? That could really make a big difference on, whether you're playing verticals or horizontals. So, it kind of depends on what you are good at and, what you like to do. But I definitely think there's some trade-offs that you have to take into account. All right,
agree.
so let's go on to the next leg. That's the 12th race, the Grade 3 Honey Fox Stakes at a mile on the turf for older fillies and mares. We're getting a good variety in this pick 5. Just about it. We got different surfaces, different conditions, different distances. Now, this is back on the turf for older horses, but this one is going just a mile. And the favorite probably, I think, will be, between the 10 Craval Doro and the 9 Lush Lips, who's shipping in. Those two, one's 2-1 in the morning line, the 9 Lush Lips, and the 10 Craval Doro is 5-2. What are you thinking on the favorites in here, and what are you thinking about this race?
I would add, moving on up to the favorite tier. I think she'll be right there with the two you mentioned. Maybe probably the third choice, actually, which is why I'm willing to lean on her so much. But classic third off the layoff. The Pegasus turf, she actually made the lead. Didn't work out, but cashed a nice check. Luis Saez now gets aboard. Zayas is fine, but Saez is strong as well. But I just think things are really conspiring for her to run a great race here. We'll see what she does with Lush Lips early as she figures to be forward, and then of course, Craval Doro is going to be coming late. But I think this is an opportunity, and one thing I'm trying to get better about, Chris, is recognizing that this is gambling. Like, you're just not going to cash every ticket, and if you structure your bets to cash instead of to extract value, you're definitely going to end up with neither in the long run. And to me, this is a gambling opportunity. I recognize that the two outside fillies are very good, and deserve to be among the top 3 choices here. But I just see moving on up is the clear overlay of the trio. And to me, that's a single opportunity. And I think so many retail players, I think we know the ones really good at it are willing to narrow or weight their bets, et cetera. But they might think, oh, I could use 9-10 and be done with it, or even 6-9-10. So they just have the 6 on a third of their tickets. I think there's opportunity here where if I have the 6 on, say 75% of my tickets, it's actually like a few prices on the inside as sort of backups. But to me, moving on up is right there with the other two. And you're clearly going to get the third largest price of the 3. And to me, that's an opportunity to lean on.
So you're thinking, like, by leaning, you're saying like single that horse in horizontal?
Single A. Now, I will say, like, and granted, she is the favorite in the first leg, the Sammy Motion mare on the outside, but that's an example. And this is, to me, where it takes time to structure bets and think about how you can get to overlay combinations that make sense. But if Sammy Joe wins the first leg and then I beat the chalk in leg 2, okay, I can spread a little bit here. And, I think Silver Moonlight, Super Zonda, and Classic Q, you got to be willing to give a mulligan to in the Pegasus. But I think those 3 at the prices they're going to be are usable in the right type of combination. Now, that again gets to kind of the crux of overspreading. If I'm looking to play a caveman, I can't get to 1, 2, 3 here if people are using 6, 9, 10. So, it's going to be structured in different tickets and things like that. But to me, moving on up allows me to try to beat the favorite in the first leg with a couple of the prices we talked about. And then if I'm right with the favorite in the first leg, maybe I can get to $20, $30 horse like Silver Moonlight or Super Zonda here. But yeah, from a like base ticket, moving on up, I would probably say is my best bet of the sequence, pending, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts, what we think the board is going to look like for the Fountain of Youth. But 3-1 on moving on up is fine with me.
So I think what I heard you say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is you would single moving on up in like your main ticket, but you might have a little backup with some of the long shots in this leg as
Right.
well.
That has the single in the first leg.
Okay. Got it.
So instead of going, 1, 2, 3, 4 with 1, 2, 3 with 1, 2, 3, 4, it's, all the horses in the first two legs with moving on up and not using Lush Lips and Crevel d'Oro at all. But then if, the favorite who I do like in the first leg, I do think is the most likely winner, the Motion filly on the outside. If she wins, as that would be like the backup single where Classic Q comes into play then. Super Zonda.
And are we talking? And we're talking about the turf pick 3 right now. Is that what we're?
Well, I guess in my head, I haven't decided the best way to divvy up the pick 5 and the turf pick 3, because the one thing with the pick 5 is in the 2 dirt races, I am dead against the morning line favorite. So in that regard, like I do feel like the pick 5 is worth looking at, because I'm now, granted, it's for 50 cents instead of $3, but still there's 2 more opportunities in the pick 5 for people to, falter. Which granted, that's 2 more I could falter. But if I'm right about the favorites losing and landing on the right horse in the dirt races, I kind of want to be involved in that pick 5. So I haven't decided exactly, how each ticket is going to look, and, scratches and changes will, I'm sure, have a say in that as well come Saturday. But because the 2 favorites I'm most against are in the dirt races, I'm definitely thinking about the pick 5.
Got it. Yeah, I was just thinking that what you had described seemed like a little bit spready for a pick 3. That's the only reason I brought that up. But the pick 5, maybe if you have strong opinions in the other legs. But
well, no, and to be clear, like the main ticket is singling here in the 12th.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that would just be a small backup. Because I thought you were, I guess, in the first leg, you were at a heavy lean on no show Sammy Joe, but you were going to include the 3 horse Venencia, right?
Yeah, I would say Venencia will definitely be on all tickets that go through the horse and the Honey Fox.
Okay, moving on up.
Moving on up.
Yeah.
And then no show would be one where, okay, that's where Classic Q could come into
play.
Got
it. Okay, got it. All right. Okay, well, that makes sense. All right. So I don't have much of a difference of opinion from you, except there's a horse I like quite a bit that you haven't mentioned, and that's the 8 horse Public Defender,
okay.
who actually ran
other
third.
Saffy.
Yeah, who actually ran third to moving on up in Crevel d'Oro on the 20th. But that race, the horse had a tough trip, and I could argue was probably just about as good as those other 2. If you reverse trips, could have won. And then they shipped her to Tampa, and she got just in a no chance race where the winner just lollygagged on the front end. So it really didn't have any chance. I just can toss that race. She was parked wide from the 10 hole on a really slow pace and no chance. So I don't think there's that much difference between her and the moving on up in Crevel d'Oro. And she could be 15-21. It's 15-1 in the morning line, and I think that could hold up. Yeah. That's the kind of horse I like in a race like this. If she does get a better trip this time, I think she can reverse that. Her summer form was really good. Now, she was reeling off wins at Colonial, but I thought her race at Keeneland was pretty darn good. Didn't win that, but Proctor Street's a really good horse. She's looking at Lucky's pretty good horse. So, I think she fits in here. It's a third start for Saffy. at a big price. That's the kind of horse I like in a race like this. So not that I think she's a standout, but I think she has as good a chance as the other three favorites, and she'll be a much better price. So that's what I'm looking for.
All right. Yeah. Hard to argue at the price, especially.
But I think moving on up could win. I think Cravaldoro could win, and Lush Lips. She hasn't really done anything wrong. She has to improve a little bit, I think, probably to win. She has been running in restricted races. Now she's stepping in against older horses, but she's been really consistent and good. So I wouldn't be surprised to see her win either. And
Yeah,
she's
and I mean with her layoff, like that's a little bit of a question with the outside post. Like she's just a good enough group. She's gonna. I mean, and in Brendan's mind, maybe it is a prep, and that's fine. But um, that to me was the other part with her is like this is we're getting into 2+ months now since she or 3+ months since she last raced.
And she's a 3-year-old spotting weight to the older horses. So, I mean, it's not a whole lot of weight, but she's outside giving a little bit of weight. So, I mean, she's not, I don't think she's any more likely to win than the
Right.
local horses. And she'll
Yeah.
probably be the favorite. And like I said, of the ones that have run locally, I think Public Defender is not really that far behind, if at all. The other two, I just think her form is buried. Even that Keeneland race, she didn't get the best of trips. So, I mean, she maybe doesn't quite class up in here, but I just haven't seen anything that would tell me that's true. We'll see. Maybe
Fair.
we'll see. All right. So now we move on to one of your favorite words, Ed, the penultimate race of the day, the 13th race, the Grade 2 McDiarmida Stakes. And a 1 3/8. This is again one of those marathons. This is for the older horses rather than the fillies and mares, but it's sort of the analog to that first race we talked about. And this race, it's a little surprised that Grand Sonata wasn't the morning line favorite. Layabout is, but I guess get it. Layabout's got a really stellar record at Gulfstream, but it seems like those two will be the favorites. What do you think about these favorites, and what do you think about the race?
Yeah, HRN definitely projects Grand Sonata as a favorite, so we'll see what ends up happening. And that's the lens that I viewed this race through. I'm absolutely going to try to beat Grand Sonata, which would be a great way to close out the $3 Turf Pick 3, which ends here. Um, you know, we're not going to be shocked if he wins, but man, 7 years old, this kind of layoff, I just have to take a stand against, and I will. Uh, I'm a little curious who goes with layabout. Was gate to wire last time, and as you noted, certainly seems to like Gulfstream being 4 for 5 with the second. But the two horses to his inside, both capable of flashing some speed, I presume. Without was kind of close, but was listed as a slow pace, so maybe that's more of a wild card. But certainly Echo Lane can be up there, and to me, that's sort of the question with layabout is what they let him do or not do on the front end. I'm gonna gamble a little bit that someone tries to make it difficult since he won gate to wire last time and learned their lesson. And I think Anaconda and Zevrev 6'7", as the kids say. I'm going to use them in equal strength, and you get the two best jockeys in the country with it. Is the non-favorite, so I definitely like that. But I think either has a solid chance. It just comes down to the pace and trip, as you noted. That's very important in these type of turf races. I think the farther you go to, there's so much that can go wrong in terms of getting bottled up or hung wide on one of the three turns, et cetera, et cetera. So using both gives a little bit of cover that hopefully one gets the better trip than the other, and they don't both crap out. But at 9-2 and 5-1, which look to be, we'll say third choices, I definitely think they're worth leaning on. And again, Grand Sonata just off the bench and a 7-year-old debut, just going to have to beat me. I'm certainly even going to look at vertically getting Grand Sonata out of the number completely.
So you got a pretty strong opinion here. I agree. I think Grand Sonata. Well, I'll agree with your algorithm. The morning line. I think Grand Sonata will be the favorite, and you're thinking it's a favorite you want to fade, and you're like
Absolutely.
you're liking 6 and 7. Did I miss another one you liked in there?
No, I mean I
Anagata.
mentioned layabout, but even that one at morning line favorite and probably second choice, I think I'm going to have to leave off and just hope someone uh, joins him early. Tank on the outside. This is one of those races where at 30-1 morning line, and given who else is in here, this would be a tall order, especially with layabout. But maybe Tank is enough that helps my top two picks, numbers 6 and 7. But B, I'm kind of eager to see how he does because I do think there's opportunity. Like we draw a line through this, given who he's facing, and seeing where he shows up next. Now he might not be 30-1 with class relief, but I actually think this is a solid horse. And I don't even know that I've been saying a mile and a half. I don't know that a mile and 3/8 is his distance anyway, being by adios Charlie out of a Brethren mare. So I'm kind of thinking, okay, tab Tank, see what happens, and then see where he shows up next time. And maybe with some form darkening, he's worth a play, in the right cutback, class drop situation, what have you. So I'm glad he's in here, because he could keep layabout honest and set things up for the two horses I'm going to use. And B, I think he might be a bet back next time.
Yeah, I'm not sure why that horse is in this race. It doesn't seem like it's a good
Set
fit.
things up for my bet, I hope.
Yeah,
I like the
I
name.
don't understand why they're stretching this horse out. There's nothing about it that tells me it's going to enjoy going longer. But like you said, it should certainly be on the lead, I would think, in here. But for this distance, I think you're going to have a fairly sharp pace, right? It
Seems that
seems,
way. Yeah, with him on the outside.
yeah, which is a reason to fade layabout. I think who's been
Right.
kind of,
Yeah, and the first thing, just the handicapping process. Like I look at just the numbers first. Buyer, Brisnet, Ragozin, et cetera. Just kind of get a lay. So those are agnostic of. I don't see the running lines. I haven't watched a replay yet, and layabout is strong. But then once you get into the dynamics of the race, who's going to be where at what time, what does that mean for how they might finish? Like the more you look into it, the more it's like, layabout's going to really have to run the race of his life, given some of the other pace considerations, including Tank. So, I wouldn't give up on him depending on what happens here, certainly. Layabout's good and, in the right, like if he were in the same type of uh, pace scenario as the first leg of this tropical turf pick three, we'd be talking about, lone speed, who's going to run with them, like lights out. But unfortunately, in this race, he's caught a tougher dynamic.
yeah, I think if he gets in a race, they cut him back next time in a race where he could clear, he'd definitely be a horse that you could play, and he'd probably be a price. But I don't see how you could play him in here. He's really not bred to go long. He hasn't really shown the ability to finish races. His race is going to be fairly fast paced, probably for the distance, and all kinds of negatives. But he's 30-1, so maybe he clears
Yeah,
and wires the field.
he's 30-1, right?
So I don't have real strong opinions in here. I do, the tours without you mentioned. Like I said, I'm always looking for the foreign bred horses in these kind of races. And I thought the U.S. debut was pretty good. Just looked like a horse that was just a little short. It just got a little tired at the end. Probably needed that race. Now second U.S. start, second after layoff. I think that horse, may be tough in here. But I don't think you'll get 8-1 on that horse. It's 3-1 on debut, and it's Graham Motion. So I mean, at 8-1, I think that horse could be potentially a play. But at I think he'll be more like 5-1 or 6-1. That's probably about fair value for me on that race. And that horse, the one horse I was trying to talk myself into was the 4-horse Dancing in Denial. That horse has ran a pretty good race in the Canadian International going a mile and a half. That very respectable race there. Had some other pretty good races. Routing not a win machine by any stretch, and I doesn't seem to perform well outside of Canada. So there's some negatives there. But I have a feeling that horse will be higher than 10-1, and may get a pretty good trip in here. So that was one I was kind of interested in, but just not enough to really want to bet it in here. But at double-digit odds, if I had to bet a horse, it would probably be that one, unless I actually got 8-1 on Without. Those are probably the two I'm closest to potentially value play, but not anything I'm real excited about.
I will, and Dancing into Now I sort of add underneath. And to me, this is, thinking vertically with this race too. Layabout, we talked about the question marks there. Grand Sonata is just going to be an underlay. So, right there, you take out the two top choices. Why wouldn't you think about the exacta and try? And to me, Dancing in Denial is one like, shoot, if the 6 or 7 run well and the 4 does too, like to me, that's a vertical worth having. My only minor criticism would be Woodbine horses. Just they don't do well, whether it's Gulfstream or Fairgrounds or Keeneland. And by don't do well, I mean the ROI isn't there. Like they get back because they're in good races up there. But at this price, knowing we're against two horses, I'm with you. I would definitely use that one as sort of my secondary with the 2 I like best.
Yeah, and this horse would reinforce what you said. It doesn't run that well when it gets outside of Canada, but I wouldn't be surprised at all to see it hit the board, right? Like I think that's what you're saying. And so, maybe that's the better way to bet it. And like you said, if you can fade the 2 favorites, then there's definitely some value in the vertical plays. Anytime you can get past the top 2 choices, you'll get some value. And I think those 2 will be significantly. The third choice probably there'll be some separation. So you really are getting value if you fade them both, and you're right about that in the verticals, I think.
And just to speak of the strength of the card, I mean, we're kind of talking to the scope of the pick 5 and turf pick 3 here, but it's pretty rare. I mean, I look at a lot of races, day to day, whether it's Mahoning on a Tuesday or Pegasus Day, like to be excited about vertical and horizontal opportunities in stakes, especially, which we have seen some days is just chalk out miserably. They've done a good job with putting this together. Like, if you're not a pick 5 player, you're going to find opportunity in exactas and tries, I think. And if, you're a horizontal player, there's obviously some opportunity against some favorites and some to lean on. If you disagree with Chris and I and love Grand Sonata, like that's great. Like instead of 4 to 5 in a 5-horse field in the summer, you're getting 3-1 here.
Yeah. And just to add to what you said, the whole card is good. We're talking about these last 5 stakes races, but there's a whole bunch of good races in those first 9 races. So it is a really good card. Most of them seem competitive. There's a few that don't look competitive, but and it's not like most of these big days when they make it 14 races, there's like 6 2-year-old maiden races with a bunch of first-time starters in it. I'm thinking Fairgrounds in particular. Half the cards.
I was going to say it.
Maiden races.
Yeah. Louisiana breds.
There's a few maiden races in here, but there really are. It's pretty much, playable races from start to finish on the card. So I'll second that. And so anything else on that before we move on to the ultimate final race of the card?
No.
All right, so let's go. That's the one everyone wants to talk about all the time. It's a Derby prep with Derby points. It's one that's got a pretty strong history of producing good horses. Like last year, the winner of the Fountain of Youth Stakes was Sovereignty, who went on to win the Kentucky Derby and get Horse of the Year. It's a 1.16 miles on the dirt for 3-year-olds, obviously, as a Derby prep. I don't know about this morning line. I just don't know how you can't make Napoleon Solo the favorite.
Well, I think it's only not the favorite, but it goes from 2-1 to 7-2.
Yeah, it just seems crazy to me. Although I will say I haven't seen any public handicappers that are high on Napoleon Solo. So maybe the
Well,
morning line makers onto something.
I did my fair odds before these came out, and unfortunately, I took the track of, well, Napoleon Solo. I don't want to bet as the favorite, but I'm excited about seeing him progress in the. But if this is correct, if he's whatever he is, 5-2 on the line,
7-2 on the
7-2.
morning line. Yeah.
I mean, he's the pick. Like, I mean, I absolutely think he's the most likely winner of this race.
Yeah, we'll come back to that because I want to talk about that, but I want to get your whole opinion on that. So I think he's the favorite. Commandment's the morning line favorite. Solitude Dude, I think, will get a lot of interest. He's 5-1 in the morning line, and Chief Wallaby, sort of the wild card, but he was ultra impressive in his debut, and his barn produced the Derby winner last year. Those are the ones that are likely to take money. I think after that, you probably get pretty good price on anything else. So what are you thinking in this race? Is there one of those that I just mentioned? Well, you already said Napoleon Solo. If he's anywhere near that morning line, you'd play him. But let's assume he is going to get bet down. What are you thinking? Or what before you saw the morning line? What were you thinking? Put it that way.
Yeah, well, I definitely was against both Jackson Hole and Commandment. The numbers just aren't there. In the Devona Dale, I talked about the favorite in there. Yeah, can win, but others are as good. Commandment, I would say, isn't even as good. Like there are colts in here that are just faster than him to date. Now you could play the race that he improves, and that could be your opinion. I want no part of that at 2-1. I didn't want any part of it at 6 or 8-1. So dead against that horse. It's sort of cliche when people say, "Oh, this is their Derby," but Solitude Dude is by Yaupen out of an Into Mischief mare, and Into Mischief, he's had classic horses and such, but it's with the right cross, and being by Yaupen, a mile and a quarter really seems like you'd be stretching what this horse can do. And I'm not saying they shouldn't take a shot if he runs well here and see if they can go on with it, but to me, given his pedigree and what we've seen to date from the Joseph barn, bringing him along in the inaugural at 6, then the Swale at 7 for his 3-year-old debut. Like, to me, you need to win this race if you want to stay on the Derby trail. So, post 10, no picnic, but I do think he's, from a brilliance standpoint, this is his shot at a middle distance to get a big 2-turn win. So, if he's actually 5-1, third choice, Napoleon Solo is the favorite, as we assume he will be. I'm going to lean on Solitude Dude. I think he would be the better play. Now, if Napoleon Solo is actually the second choice, then that's kind of out the window, and I'll have to adjust accordingly when I get to this leg. But given what we've talked about so far, Chris, in the pick 5, we're willing to toss the favorites in races 11 and 13. 11 and 12, especially, and 13 for that matter, Grand Sonata. I'm fine with using both Napoleon Solo and Solitude Dude here.
So let's talk a little bit about Solitude Dude. If you look at him, he looks like a sprinter too. He's just blocky kind of horse. He just everything about him says sprinter, but doesn't mean you can at Gulfstream Park, get a mile and 16th. But he does look like a sprinter. Through and through to me, breeding wise, just everything about him. And he has had pretty good trips in his races. And it does seem like this is a race with plenty of other speed, right? So as much as you were making the case for him, I think it's a pretty big ask, but it comes down to price, right?
Right. And I definitely keep hearing the speed, and I get it. Like you look at, any number of these are capable. I mean, even a horse like Talking, and I'm going off the Brisnet pace ratings now, but he's never really been near the lead, but the pace ratings say he can be. So if he's pushed it all, he can be a factor. Obviously,
was that Talking? You said
Talking, yeah.
Yeah, he's scratched. He's scratched.
Oh, is he out?
They're gonna take him out. So I read somewhere he's not going. So he and Global Aviator, the 9, are both out of the race.
Outski.
Yeah.
Right.
So now it's a 9-horse field. I meant to say, I'm glad you brought that up because I meant to
No,
mention
thank you.
that.
Yeah.
So that takes a
I didn't
little
even
bit
bring
of the
him up because
speed,
I
but he
loved it.
wasn't
Yeah, it's a
really the
little bit.
main speed,
No,
right?
no, not at all. And I only mention him again because like the person that pace rating say he could be a little closer than maybe his running line suggests. But Rocky's Balboa, clearly a horse who, again, if you're in here, Roman's entering this horse, like if you're truly trying to win, you're going to go. Like Rocky's Balboa isn't going to cat and mouse and beat Napoleon solo. So, yeah, it's a little concern. I do think though that Solitude Dude, like if you're a backer of his, which I will be at the very least in the pick five, hope to get live to him. Like to me, again, like this is your derby to use the cliche. I just see them going for it. Like, hey, we have the fastest horse. He won at 6, a stakes race. He won the Swale, a overclass president who's a horse some people like. I think is he in the Rebel or the Gotham?
He's in the Rebel on
Rebel. Thank
Sunday.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like to me, yeah, let's go for it. So, maybe that's good enough. And I'm willing to 5 and out at 5-1.
Yeah, I was actually thinking they are going for it, right? But you see this a lot. I mean, they're worried about him getting the distance, especially with a hot pace. I mean, they know he's a sprinter, and this is probably his limit. So I'm not convinced they're going to send him. I think a lot of times they're going to say, well, if he has any chance at all going 2 turns, it's going to be we got to teach him to relax and sit off horses. And this might be where they try that. That's what I was thinking. I don't know. I'm just guessing. Mm-hmm. But, I could see that scenario unfold. But what do you think about that? You think they're just going to send him and that's his game and they're not going to take him out of it?
I mean, and I'm informing this response with like, what would I do if it were choose your own adventure? I think looking ahead, okay, what could the Derby look like? What could our chance be if we do run well and go on? I think there's a real possibility that there's not a ton of pace. We've seen Paladin and Renegade are the top 2 choices, and neither of those.
But nearly.
Yeah, nearly. But if it were me, I'd be like, let's see what we have in a mile and a 16th, and we can evaluate, with 4, 5, 6 weeks rest to the final prep and see what we want to do at 9 furlongs. But I would just get the 8.5, how you think you best can. And to me, that's on the lead.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'm just not sure what they're going to do with him from that post. They could be tempted to not, because remember, it's a short run to that first turn. So if they want to go for the lead, they got to really go, right? And they're worried about their horse getting the distance. Maybe they're going to say, hey, you know what? Let's not necessarily go for it. If somebody wants it, we can set off, Plus, one thing I've noticed, I didn't bring this up yet, but at Gulfstream, the rail has not been good in the days I've been playing there. It's been bad. And so maybe, sitting 2 or 3 wide, a lot of riders just park out there now. They figured it out. Now, I don't know. I haven't played it this week, so I'm not sure. I'll have to watch the track today. Today and tomorrow, Thursday and Friday. But that's something to keep in mind too. So, maybe that outside post is not a disadvantage. Even if he gets parked a little wide, it might not be as bad as it seems if they decide not to go. But that'll be interesting to see what the tactics are on that horse and on Napoleon Solo, because he has tons of natural speed, but on his debut they kind of pulled him back off the lead on purpose, and he settled for a little bit, and then they kind of let him on the outside, and he kind of took over and crushed the field. And then in the Champagne, he pretty much went wire to wire. He's got a ton of natural speed, but my guess is they're not going to be anxious to go battling on the lead. Now, if he breaks alertly and nobody goes with him because they're all afraid of him, I doubt that's going to happen. Then maybe he doesn't. But I think they'd be perfectly happy sitting second or third in the 2 or 3 path off of, some of those inside horses. That's probably the trip they're looking for with him too. I don't think they're going to be gunning him, to blaze out of the gates and go to the lead and increase his lead from there on. So my guess is that those two horses may not be being pushed as much as you think early. So, but we'll see.
Yeah, and Chad Summers responded to someone on X, talking about all the speed in the race and Napoleon Solo among them. It's basically like, did you watch his debut? So, but
is that what
I
he
also,
said?
yeah,
He said,
that
"Oh yeah,
was the
yeah," because they
response
were
in the
clearly
tweet.
trying to get him to rate that day. And the
Yeah,
thing, he's never been the favorite, even on debut. And in the Champagne, there was like a 2-5 shot. I can't remember who it was.
yeah, it's a
And,
Cotsworth. I'm going to call it
yeah,
up because this is the second time I haven't been able to think of it.
and he
Or
kind of
no, it was
crushed.
the Amos horse
Yeah,
that
and had
freaked.
came off a huge maiden win, like by
Yeah,
20 lengths or something.
he beat
And
Whit Beckman at a
yeah, and he
horse.
just crushed their souls, or tore
It's
their
our
heart out.
time.
Yeah, I mean, none of those horses have come back to run, and people are saying that's a negative, but I think he just crushed them. So I was really impressed with that Champagne, and I'll be real interested to see what they do. And so, you talked about him being the most likely winner. I agree. And to me, this is a race. We always talk about fair odds. Well, you don't necessarily have to make a fair odds line on every horse, but like for me, this race, his Champagne race, if he runs back to that race, he's going to win.
Oh,
And,
absolutely.
and that was, 5 months ago. So a healthy horse has developed quite a bit. This is when those 2-year-old to 3-year-old. So, his best effort now should be significantly better than it was then. The thing is, he's not going to be fully cranked up for that comeback effort. They're thinking longer term with him. But with these healthy 3-year-olds, what you kind of expect and what you typically see is they come back, they're only 90% fit or 85% fit, and they run a race, but because they're better horses now, they can equal what they ran as a 2-year-old without it being the best they can run today. And that's what I'd expect to see out of him. Just assume, and they purposely shut him down. He hasn't had any injuries. They gave him time off. They brought him back on a schedule. He's hit the schedule. I think he's going to be at that 85, 90% level. And so the question is, if that's true, what are the likelihood that he's going to run, at least as good as his best effort as a 2-year-old? I'd say probably at least 50%. That's based on my experience. And I've done a lot of research on these kind of things. So,
Yeah.
50% is odds on. And, there's a chance he could run better, depending on how fit he is. But, and there's a chance he could run worse. But I'd say, he's probably got at least a 50% chance of running as well or better than he did as a 2-year-old. And that probably wins the race, unless somebody really jumps up. So to me, if you get anything close to 7-2, which I think is what you were saying earlier, there's value there. Doesn't mean he's not a lock to win. 50% isn't a lock, but
my fair odds
value.
were 5-2, and that was with talking in the race. So, even could say 2-1.
Yeah, to me.
And you said Global Aviator's out too, right?
Yeah, he's out as well. So anyway, that's kind of some logic to try to get what are the fair odds on a horse without having to go through the entire field. And you can't always do that, but when you have a horse that clearly its best effort is very likely to win, then the question is, how likely is it to run its best effort? In this case, it doesn't even have to run its best. I just think it has to run a 90% effort, which would equate to what it was running as a 2-year-old. So anyway, I'm pretty high on Napoleon Solo in this race. And even if he were to run well and run second, I think, he's set up to run well going forward. But, I think he's definitely the horse to beat. Now, you haven't mentioned Chief Wallaby, so I'm curious to what you're thinking about him, because he's, to me, is the other potential, superstar in this field. He could be nothing, but he could be really good. Based on his debut was about as impressive as you could be. You couldn't really run much better. So what do you think of that one?
Did love the debut. Bill Mott is one of the trainers I at least want to play poker with. I've been doing this a long time, and there are definitely some you get a feel for, sort of their demeanor and what it means. And even with him, like, oh, we're looking at the allowance on Sunday. I wish didn't have to run here. Like, I have no idea what to make of that. Like, he's a Hall of Fame trainer and probably has like his ideal, but he also knows he's not always going to get your ideal. It's horse racing. So, to me, is it really a negative? Who knows? I will say, like that stat I ran on X that Mott's 1 for 13 with 3-year-olds making their second career start in the stakes. I mean, yeah, 13 is a small sample size, but Hidden Scroll was one of them in the Fountain of Youth. Elate was one of them, a filly he brought up to Tampa. She was 3-10 and she got beat. And I ran the same stat for Chad Brown because he has Iron Honor in the Gotham, who I like quite a bit. And he was, I think it was 24%, something like that, with a much bigger sample size. So, clearly some trainers are better at it than others from a win standpoint, but it's Mott. He doesn't have to win. He wants to get to certain targets. And, I can't let Chief Wallaby go at 6-1. 9-2's probably getting in that territory. It's a little light. I will absolutely say, though, without hesitation, I like him better than Commandment. Like, I absolutely think Chief Wallaby wins this race more often than Commandment does. So, from that standpoint, I'm not going to cut my nose off to spite my face. I think there's opportunity still using him. It's just a matter of, if Napoleon Solo is really the second choice, what you can do with that.
Yeah, a couple of things on Chief Wallaby. One would be I wouldn't have used the same criteria as you did. My criteria on a horse like Chief Wallaby, that the one that I always like to look at, is when, especially in these good barns, when they win on debut sprinting, and then that means their next start is against winners, whether it's in a stakes race or whatever. And then, but what do they do next? Do they do like Solitude Dude and do they run him sprinting again, or do they stretch it out immediately? In this case, so how do they do when they win on debut and then the next race, is a route race? That's the key way to look at it, I think. And you don't get a lot of those, especially with Bill Mott, because, until recently, he seldom would win sprinting on debut. Lately, he's been winning a lot more often.
Yeah, that's true.
But the last two horses he's had where he had them in open company, not like state bred horses, where he had them win on debut and then he stretched them out in their second start. Both won. One was Knightsbridge, who's actually running on this card, and the other was Scylla. So those are the last two that he's had like that. He hasn't had too many of them. But, to me, is Chief Wallaby another Knightsbridge or Scylla, or maybe potentially even better? Possibly. I don't know. But I
That was
wouldn't
a great debut.
Yeah, I wouldn't let any stat talk me out of it. I think he's the wild card. He's the one horse where maybe Napoleon Solo does run back to Champagne and gets beat. I think the only horse that could possibly beat him in that scenario, if he ran back to as well as he did on that day, would be Chief Wallaby. So to me, It's one of those two. I don't think Solitude Dude is going to do it at this distance. I think he could be a good horse in the, H. Allen Jerkins, the proverbial, cut back horse. I'm not sure about Commandment. I'm not quite as negative as you are on that one. But to me, it's Napoleon Solo is the horse to beat. Chief Wallaby is the wild card. That's kind of the way I saw this race.
Well, let's just hope the morning line's right, because we'll both have an opportunity with Napoleon Solo.
Yeah, at the morning line, they're both playable, I think. I don't know if we'll get the morning line in either one, but right. I don't trust this morning line at all. I don't see how Napoleon Solo's not the favorite. That'll be like, but like I said, I do have to admit that nobody likes him. I've looked at, I tried to scan right before this, people's picks that have done early picks on it, and nobody's picking him. So, we'll see.
I mean, let's be real. If it were Pletcher with a rod up, he'd be 2-5 in here.
That's true. It could just be the connections. Kendrick and Summers maybe is why He's not. And he is going against Cox and Irad
Yeah.
and Safi and
No,
Pratt and
and that
Mott
doesn't
and
bother me. I
Junior
mean,
on the So maybe it is
Chad's
a
won
connections
races,
thing.
Kendrick won races. I will say, like, the one thing in the back of my head, and granted, I'm willing to take 5-2. So, but like in my head, if like, oh man, this horse is getting smoked, he's 3-2. Like the reason I'm not even more bullish is it does bother me, right or wrong. Just being honest, like what's in my head. Like after that champagne, to not at least try to train for the Breeders' Cup. Like I could see, you know, 3 weeks in, we're not going to make the ship. Just, that was a big effort. He's not back the way we want. Like they closed up shop, period. We're not going to the Breeders' Cup. That bothers me a little bit with the layoff, just in terms of what price I'm willing to take. But to your point, that champagne, if he runs better than it, he's winning this race much more often than not. And if he ties it, he's still winning this race probably 50% of the time, as you said. So it's just a matter of, what chance does he not run back to that? Is there a reason that they were so quick to skip the Breeders' Cup? Only they know the answer to that, but it has to factor into what price you're willing to take. For me, it's 5-2, but with Commandment being the morning line favorite, I'm definitely looking forward to leaning on this horse in the Maltese.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is just I bet you if the Breeders' Cup had been at Keeneland or Churchill or Belmont, he would be in it. They just didn't want to ship all the way to the west and then ship all the way
Yeah, that's
back
probably
after
true.
he'd run a huge effort. I'm sure they went in the Champagne saying, "Hey, this is it for him.
Right. Yeah,
We got a good horse."
That's the Occam's razor explanation for
Yeah,
sure.
we're not going to take the chance of, after a big effort, shipping all the way to California to run again. Why do that? We got a potential Triple Crown, competitive horse. Let's point for that. That's a lot more important than going to the Breeders' Cup in Del Mar, or where was it? Was it Del Mar?
It was at
that
Del
where?
Mar.
Yeah, it was
Yep.
yeah. So to me, I think that's what drove it. But we'll see. A lot of times these 2-year-olds don't develop either. So maybe he doesn't develop. We'll
No,
see.
yeah.
So there's our questions. That's why it's always about price. But I just if the connections allow this horse to go off at 7-2, that's a bet. So
Yeah,
we'll
agreed.
see. We'll see if it materializes. Okay. So I think we've kind of hit on the structure already for the pick 3. You're thinking of a pick 5. Maybe just real quickly run down your pick 5, the kind of what you're thinking on the pick 5.
Yeah, so I would say the two sort of main opinions, or 2.5, depending on how you group the dirt races, but definitely looking to lean on number 6 in the 12th race, so the middle leg. I'm drawing a blank on the name of the race because I should have kept my PPs
Which race
up.
are we? Which one do you
The
want?
12th.
The 12th was the Honey. Wait, is that the Honey Fox? No, yeah, that's the Honey Fox, right?
Okay. Yeah, the Safi number 6 coming out of the Pegasus.
Moving on up.
Thank you. Like that to me is definitely like the heaviest lean. If she wins is the third choice. I want to make sure I have the most coverage and feel like I'm giving myself some EV opportunities, beating the two fillies on the outside. Then sort of the other tenet of this is I'm against the favorite in the Devona Dale, the Brad Cox filly on the outside. I just see her as an underlay, given that the 3 I am going to use, I see as likely or very close to it. That's Imperatrice, Swing Vote, and She Be Smooth, 5, 7, 8 to beat the 9 in the Devona Dale. And then sort of 1A to that is Commandment's the morning line favorite in the Fountain of Youth. Probably isn't going to be the favorite, but still, to me, that signals he's going to be an underlay. So, I think in the Fountain of Youth, it's just a matter of how much I weigh Napoleon Solo. But given the single of moving on up, I think I'm fine using Chief Wallaby and Solitude Dude as well.
All right. Which horse is what's your most the bet you're most excited about making? It sounds like it's something with moving on up involved in that. Is it
Yeah, I would say either I mean like especially if you're able to, catch a good double, like if the race 10-11 double and I'm live and it's great, like then if you get the single home and moving on up, you're really looking at some positive low pays. But I would say just, thinking about how the board might be and vertical opportunities. I think moving on up with the three inside horses in vertical play. So six with 1, 2, 3. And actually, I would maybe even add the eight to that public defender. You kind of talk me onto her
there you
offering
go.
some
There you
value.
go.
And yeah, I mean, look, if Lush Lips is like a troubled fourth and public defenders in the mix and I miss, I'm gonna be upset. So but moving on up is a key. And then I think in the 13th race, the McDermott, I don't think either Layabout or Grand Sonata have to be in the trifecta, and they're going to be the top two choices. So I'm definitely looking at some plays that basically key around Anaconda and Zverev to be in the mix and have the two favorites out completely.
Yeah, when you can get the top two choices out, there's a lot of opportunity there. So I like your thinking. Okay, so I did have, I don't want to, I'm taking a lot of your time, but the one question was, do you have an opinion in the Rebel or the Gotham? So any strong opinion in either of
Yeah,
those
I
races?
sort of hinted at the Gotham. Definitely love Iron Honor.
All right.
Eager to see how that race gets bet. I actually made fair odds of him 4-5, which is very rare for me to go
Wow.
that low. Now there is a scratch in there, so that was part of it. Actually, the horse I thought had the second most likelihood of winning scratch, so that kind of compressed everything. But yeah, Iron Honor, I thought the debut was awesome. Me sort of Chief Wallaby, but for Chad Brown, which is why I was so interested in that stat second time out. But the Gotham, great progression, gets to go 1 turn mile for his second start. And I just think the sky's the limit for him being by Nyquist out of a blame mare. The Rebel, man, great race. I need to do a little more work on it because with that type of field, and we're getting to the point where some of these horses have some name recognition and they're getting bet and they're, coming out of races where, they've won and people are getting attached. Both of Mark Cassie's Colts, they won previous preps at Oaklawn. Visually looked awesome. The numbers did not come back as excited I was in the moment watching their race, but I don't know. Do you give the horse who laid an egg in the Southwest another shot now that you're getting a much bigger price? I'm kind of inclined to think maybe so. The other Cassie in this case, but Rebel's
Well,
the
the other
toughest
Cassie, that
of
was
the three for
strategic
me.
risk, right?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The Rebel for me is the toughest of the three. Like the Fountain of Youth, kind of board dependent because if Napoleon Solo takes too much money, I'll call an audible to Solitude Dude with Chief Wallaby a little. Iron Honor period in the Gotham. The Rebel, it's a tough one. I'm excited for it, but less of an opinion from a gambling standpoint.
Yeah, I didn't really have an opinion in the Gotham. The Rebel, not strong opinion, but I liked Rancho Santa Fe last time. He got a puzzling trip. He was kind of in a pretty good spot, and then somehow Pratt let him get shuffled back, and then he came on late. So I think we didn't get the best out of him in that race. I'm not sure he's good enough, but I think he's a big price, at least underneath. I could use him. Probably, class president we talked about who had ran second to Solitude Dude. He I thought was hurt by the rail, the dead rail last time. I think he's got a lot of upside. And it's only his third start. He's the one I like over the comebacking horses that are going to take all the money, blackout time and litmus tests. For me, class president might be the interesting one with the upside that because those other horses will take so much money, he might
Yeah,
be
but
a bet.
blackout time, I definitely have to let beat me, especially if that morning line's close. And I liked his Breeders' Futurity. Like, he chased home Ted Noffey and, you know, Ted was by far the best 2-year-old. And people are going to see those running lines, and I don't know. He's an underlay for me. I'm with you. Maybe he's gone on with it as a 3-year-old and great, but at the price, I'm definitely looking to fade.
Yeah, and for me, litmus test, I haven't liked the way he's been training. They already skipped one race with him. He's pretty exposed for a Baffert horse. I don't think there's a lot of upside there. Baffert does great shipping.
That's a good point on Baffert. Like I mean, just to use your term, like once they're exposed, you know who they are, and I don't even say that as a criticism to Baffert. I almost say that's a compliment. Like he trains them to run their race, and if they're not good enough, they're not good enough.
Yeah, and like, he's not a bad horse. He's
right. Yeah, no, but
he just doesn't have a lot of upside.
I like that about Baffert. Like you know when he has the goods, and I kind of agree with you on this one. It doesn't feel like this one is one of the ones.
No, he seems like more of a second, third tier Baffert type horse.
But he did win the Haskell with Coyle, so. And Mucho Gusto won the Pegasus, so he's like Lucas. He can place him in the right spot and win a big one. But yeah, I agree with you.
So anyway, I'm not really into those. It's kind of strange that they're running the Rebel on a Sunday, but maybe that's a good way to place it. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it worked out with getting all these jocks and So I mean, I'd say once you get into, I kind of call it the Final Four. I mean, I know there's more than 4, but that last round of preps, I think Saturday is the day to do them. But this kind of feels like a good try on Sunday after the big races at Gulfstream and Aqueduct.
Yeah, although a $1 million race seems like you could pull in. You could pull in some of the top.
Yeah, I mean that's.
But it's a pretty good field. Yeah, it's a pretty good field. I think both. Not so much the Gotham, but these other 2 preps are the kind of you want to see. They're going to sort themselves out. You got some horses that ran well as 2-year-olds coming back for their first start, and you got some young horses that have displayed the ability to win at shorter distances, stretching out, and then you've got a couple of potential upside horses that you just don't know much about, like Chief Wallaby. So, good mix. Good. That's what makes the Triple Crown Trail fun. Is these kind of races, and they start sorting themselves out, and you can, maybe occasionally you can find a good opinion and take a stance against a horse that people you think are underappreciating and get rewarded for it. So we'll find out.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm excited. Great weekend and glad to get a chance to talk about it.
All right. Well, thank you, Ed, for joining us on the show and sharing all your thoughts with the listeners, and thank all the listeners out there. That'll conclude show 351 of the Sport of Kings podcast. Good luck this weekend, and please enjoy the Brooklyn Boogaloo Blowout. Cheers. All right, that's a wrap. Thank you.